Okay, I had a nice Christmas and New Year. In case you were wondering, I hope you had a nice Christmas and New Year. I can't believe it's 2025. 2024 went by in something of a bit of a dreamlike state. It was so fast. I don't know how we're already in 2025. Life is strange. Anyways, I've already made my worst TV shows video for 2024. I wanted to make my best shows video, and I'm just going to go off. I finally got this published at Forbes, and I actually included 24 shows, and I didn't mean to, but it's 24 shows for 2024. And a lot of people say there weren't any good shows in 2024. I have to disagree. I think there were a lot of good shows, and then there were some excellent shows. A lot of the shows on this list are just going to be good shows. There were shows I enjoyed, and as I go down the list, I'm going to get into stuff that I enjoyed more and more. So it's not really like an ordered ranking, like this was the 24th best and the 23rd best all the way up to number one, because I don't really feel that way. I don't know that you can really do that. How do you really quantify? I don't know. I didn't have like one breakout show that was just like so much better than everything else this year, but I had a few that I liked like significantly more, and then others that I just thought were pretty enjoyable. And you're not going to agree with all of these. Some of these are ones that I think a lot of probably people who subscribe to this channel didn't watch or didn't like, or just outside of what they would normally watch. And that's fine. We are allowed to have different opinions about things. So I'm just going to start and just go down. So this is just the same order as my post at Forbes. Let's start with My Lady Jane, which is a ahistorical romance show. This is probably the show that I think that most people who watch my channel are probably going to be the furthest away from. I'm just going to start with it. It's an interesting fantasy, and it's ahistorical in the same way that The Great is, which is on Hulu. This is on Prime Video, where it's like there's not any attempt to make a historically accurate story, and they right off the bat they say fuck history, and it's a retelling of Lady Jane Grey, who was queen for like 9 days and then was executed. And in this story, she's not executed, but she still struggles with a bunch of like conflict when she's suddenly put on the throne, and her cousin Mary's trying to have her killed, and then there's this whole fantasy element with a certain class of people who can turn into animals, and they are treated like second-class citizens, and it's a romance, and it has like modern music in it. So it's definitely not for people who are like hardcore history fans, but for a fun, romantic, lighthearted show with a lot of good like conflict, it's a lot of fun. And I did like that the main character, Jane, is not a girl boss trope. She's actually, even though she's like a likable character who's confident in her own ways, she actually makes a lot of mistakes and does a lot of things wrong and suffers the consequences for that. And I'm always really annoyed by girl boss tropes, and I really thought that this show, when I first saw previews and when I watched even the first part of the first episode, I was like, oh no, this is going to be bad. And then it ended up being surprisingly good. All right, moving on. Sugar's on Apple TV. It is a film noir, like modern day film noir, mystery, police, or private eye show. It's got Colin Farrell in it. He's really, really good in this. He gets 2 shows in this list because he's just a phenomenal actor. I think he's just gotten better and better with age. This show has a really crazy twist. And I think this twist, the moment that this twist happens in the show, and I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I think this is the moment where people either were like, oh, damn, this is cool, or they were like, turn it off. And I totally understand if you were in that camp. I thought the twist was just so shocking and out there and weird and unexpected that it was kind of a breath of fresh air. So that's getting a second season. I'm excited to see where they go with this. My Lady Jane was canceled. I've never seen a more passionate fan base than My Lady Jane's fan base, though. They are trying so hard to get this back, kind of like the Raised by Wolves fan base was trying to get that show picked up somewhere. Alas, that never happened. I doubt it ever will. Skeleton Crew. Now, this isn't over yet, so I can't say for sure if this will end well or not. But it's airing currently on Disney Plus. It's the new Star Wars show. It's like Star Wars in, the Goonies meets Star Wars. And you know what? It's a fun show. It's like The Mandalorian in that it's just like fun Star Wars, especially the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian. But it's even more fun than it's like The Mandalorian still has sort of this overarching like serious plot. This is just more like a pirate adventure story. And it's definitely geared more towards kids. And I'm honestly confused why Disney hasn't tried to do this more. Like, why are we getting shows like The Acolyte that have no parent audience, right? At least kids are a bankable audience for Star Wars. I feel like if they had, started with The Mandalorian and then they'd made Skeleton Crew as the second show and like really pushed this like younger audiences on Disney Plus for Star Wars, they could be creating a whole new generation of Star Wars fans. And I don't know why they didn't do that. But I'm really enjoying it. I mean, it's not perfect, but Jude Law is great, and it's just a fun escapist, no politics, no bullshit Star Wars show. I'd like to see more like that. I'm also really excited for Andor, which is a deeply political show, but it's just so damn good. Next up, Agatha All Along. Now, again, I think a lot of people watching this video will probably think, what? Agatha All Along? But you know what? It was pretty good. I think it's right. My favorite shows on Disney Plus that are Marvel shows are WandaVision and Loki. I think those are by far and away the best shows on Disney Plus in the MCU. And I think Agatha All Along is a really great sequel / spiritual successor to WandaVision. It's kind of uneven, but honestly, it had some cool twists. I think Catherine Hahn, who plays Agatha Harkness, is great. And even though they pushed all this stuff that it was going to be like this very queer, LGBTQ MCU show, like they as they always do, they really overemphasize that in the marketing. But it's handled very well in the show, and there's nothing really preachy or anything like that. It's just put in there in a totally organic way, and it's fun. I thought it ended really well, and I was surprised at how good the show actually ended up being. Mostly because I think Catherine Hahn and Agatha Harkness, I think that she's a great actress, and that her character is such an interesting character. She is pretty evil in a lot of ways, but she's very sympathetic, and that balance is interesting. So, The Dragon Prince had season 6 and season 7 this year, and I have to admit I have not finished season 7. I got too busy around the holidays. I ended up watching a bunch of movies instead of shows. But season 6 was quite good, and I'm halfway through season 7, and it's pretty good so far. It just really depends on how it ends. But I think that overall, this was a return to form for the show. It was kind of weak in season 4 and 5, especially after a really good season 3. And this whole mystery of Erebos saga in this animated series has been not as good as the first 3 seasons. So, but it did pick up steam, and I think had some really good moments this year. So, fans of like Avatar: The Last Airbender, this has Aaron Ehasz, who is the lead writer on that show. He's one of the co-creators of this show. I think it's worth watching. And even though it's a little uneven, I think especially the first 3 seasons, if you haven't watched The Dragon Prince, I think they're really great. And they're really great characters, complicated bad guys, everything else. Teacup on Peacock. This was the show that kind of came out of nowhere. It's about some people who are like in a kind of rural area who suddenly like the power stops working and the animals get all scared. And then this guy comes along and like spray paints this blue line all around the property. And it turns out that if you cross that line, you die a horrible, gruesome death. And it goes from there. It deals with like an alien invasion, but it's kind of more like The Thing. If you've ever watched the old John Carpenter movie, The Thing, where this alien can possess anybody and can like, it knows their memories and it knows everything. And so there's a lot of tension and some pretty good characters. It's again, it's not perfect, but it's fun. It's an entertaining show. I hope it gets a second season because there's a lot they could do with it. But that was a fun one. Sweetpea on Starz. Ella Purnell is all over the place these days. She's in, I believe, 3 shows that are on this list. The first one, Sweetpea, is about a young woman who's she's British. Ella Purnell is British, even though she's often doing an American character. Like in so many shows, you see her doing an American accent. She does it so well that you don't even realize she's British, or you don't remember until you see a show like Sweetpea. But she's a young woman who's basically a wallflower. Nobody sees her. She's invisible to everyone, or she's bullied by people. She's treated like a doormat. And she just takes it. She just has no self-confidence until one day she snaps and kills somebody. And then she likes it so much that she keeps killing people. And it's one of those great, like, birth of a serial killer shows. And Purnell's such a good actress that she really carries it. But there's a lot of good actors in this show. And it's pretty stripped down. It's a pretty straightforward story with just a few characters, and she works as at a local news agency, like a newspaper, and as like an assistant. But then she uses the killings to like get the story leads, and so there's a lot of like tense moments, like, oh no, is she going to get caught? But oh no, is she going to kill somebody? Like, do you root for this person or do you hope that they get caught? So it's fun. There's only like 6 episodes, but it ends on a real cliffhanger. So again, hopefully, I don't know if this has actually been renewed, but if it is renewed, hopefully the second season continues to be as good as the first. That's on Starz. Arcane season 2. This was on my most disappointing list as well, my worst shows list. But the thing is that Arcane season 2, while disappointing, was still really good. Like, there was a lot of really good stuff in season 2. Like, I'm not saying because I was disappointed because it wasn't as good as season 1 that it was a bad show. Like, this is still one of the most gorgeously animated shows out there. It's just, and there are some scenes, especially in the finale, that are just like mind-blowingly amazing looking. So from that perspective, just from the perspective of like the production and was I entertained, I think this was definitely a good season of TV. Now, it was disappointing. It felt super, super rushed. It really felt like they jam-packed at least 3 seasons into this one season. And I think that if they had just given us even just 3 seasons, that it could have been a lot better, less jarring. A lot of plots just sort of kind of like jumped up. Like, there were time jumps, there were new factions and characters introduced, but in a very rushed way. And I just feel like by the end, it didn't quite tie everything up in a way that was satisfying. But it was still a good show, and I still enjoyed watching it. We're sticking with animated stuff. I probably should have put all the animated stuff together, but this is not really ordered. But The Legend of Vox Machina season 3. This is based on the Critical Role podcast. You know, it's a bunch of voice actors who get together and play very highly scripted sessions of D&D or other games, and they have turned their first campaign into this Amazon Prime series. I love it. I love the characters. I think it's funny. It captures that sort of sense of like goofy, dirty, potty mouth D&D games that we all play. Like, if you play D&D, like 90% of the time it's joking around and making stupid jokes and being goofy. Like, there was the Secret Level show that came out on Prime, and it's like animated shorts of different games, and they have a D&D episode. And the problem with the D&D episode is this is super serious. And like, I don't think that's how D&D is for most people. Or certainly hasn't been in my experience with D&D, and I've been playing since I was a kid. It's usually a lot of goofing off, and that's what Vox Machina does so well. I don't think that this season was quite as good as last season. I thought season 2 is still the best of the 3. But it was still a good way to sort of wrap up the Dragon Conclave plot. Okay, moving on. The Gentleman on Netflix. So this is Guy Ritchie. He made a movie called The Gentleman, which you can watch on Netflix. And then he adapted it and made it into a TV show, which you can watch on Netflix. And it's kind of it's about this young nobleman who is left his father's estate and realizes that they've been, he had a deal with this crime family, and they've been growing marijuana on his property, and their family's been making an enormous amount of money from it, but he doesn't want to be involved because it's dangerous and illegal and all those things. But in order to extricate himself from this problem, he has to work with these criminals, and there's sort of what follows is a bunch of like heists and tight spots and pickles they find themselves in, and it's funny, and it's very Guy Ritchie. If you like Guy Ritchie's, early stuff like Snatch or Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, it's kind of in that vein of like, it's crime, but it's funny, and it's got its moment of violence, but it's always kind of just entertaining and light, and it's a very entertaining show. Speaking of entertaining, Bad Monkey on Apple TV. I really liked this. I'm not a huge Vince Vaughn fan. I will admit that when I rewatched season 2 of True Detective, I really couldn't stand Vince Vaughn in that until maybe the last episode when he really kind of brought it. But for the most part, like, Vince Vaughn can get on my nerves. And yet, for whatever reason, even though he's the lead, the primary protagonist of Bad Monkey, I loved him in this. He was so funny, I thought. And I just liked his character, Andrew Yancey, who's like this detective fired from the police department. And, he's a food inspector, but it's a mystery. And it kind of, if you've seen Jane the Virgin, it sort of reminds me of that show. It's almost like a telenovela, but not without the like Hispanic Latin part of the telenovela, but it's got like a funny narrator, and it's very over the top. All the characters are over the top, and there's a good like sort of a mystery, sort of a crime conflict, and some supernatural stuff, some sort of magical realism. But overall, it's just a fun character show. That's a lot of it's very entertaining. I'm excited for season 2 of that one also. Sunny. Now, Sunny is also on Apple TV. This show was canceled after the first season, which was really, really unfortunate because I thought it was one of the most unique shows of 2024. It's got Rashida Jones. She plays a character, Suzy Sakamoto, who has moved to Japan, married a man there who works in robotics, although she thinks he works in refrigerators. But they have a son together, and then her husband and son have gone on a flight. The flight has crashed, and it appears they're dead. But there's some weird stuff going on, like every other person on the plane, when their phone rings, it goes to their voicemail, but when she calls her husband, it doesn't. So they haven't found any of like their stuff. So there's this question, are they dead? And she sort of goes out and starts investigating this. And then this robot is delivered to her named Sunny. And this like a companion bot. And in this sort of near future science fiction world, there are these bots who like can be like your servants, but also your companions. And there's some really interesting stuff they do with technology and with their phones. It's like very, very near future. So all the technology is a little bit different, but not like wildly far future different. And then there's this whole mystery element to it, and the Yakuza. And so and it ended on a really big twist / cliffhanger. And I really, really was excited to see what came next. And then they canceled it. And that's weird. Apple hasn't done a lot of like really shitty cancellations, so it was unfortunate to see them not bring this show back. And other shows that I think are not as entertaining get a second season or third season or whatever. Anyways, Say Nothing on Hulu. Now, this is a show based on real life events. It takes place during the Troubles in Northern Ireland, so it has to do with sort of the rise of the IRA. And some of the characters are historical figures that were deeply, deeply involved in IRA operations against the British. And so it's about, terrorism or freedom fighting, however you want to look at it. And this one I'm actually not quite finished with. I've been watching it over the last week or so, 2 weeks maybe. I'm most of the way through it, and it's excellent. Excellent acting, writing, production values. It's really a gripping drama with characters who are complex, and a lot of them, these are people responsible for, blowing up and harming or killing civilians, but you really actually connect with these characters, and that's a pretty hard thing to do well, is to have us connect and sympathize and even like and admire some of these people who are responsible for these horrible things. And I think it provides a nuanced look at the conflict in Northern Ireland during that very, very difficult time in that country's history. All right, from season 3 on MGM Plus. I thought this was a super uneven season. I'm not going to lie. I thought there were a few episodes that were real stinkers, and I think that one of the problems with this show is that they often will have like a really big thing at the beginning of the season and a really big thing at the end of the season, and then they'll emulate that even in episodes. So there'll be something big that happens at the beginning of an episode, something big that happens at the end of an episode, but in the middle, there's a lot of filler. There's a lot of conversations and arguments between characters who are often too unpleasant. The only reason that this manages to make my best of list is because it still has such great stuff, a great mystery. It's fun to theorize about what's going on, and there's some really cool twists, and we learned a lot about what's going on in this mysterious town where all these people are trapped. If you don't know, it's basically like Lost, but if Lost was a horror show instead of, whatever Lost was. This town that people find themselves stuck in. They can't leave, and at night these terrifying monsters come out, and if you're not hidden away in your house with these special talismans, they will rip you to shreds. And then there's a bunch of other stuff, a bunch of other mysteries and layers to peel back. And it's a lot of fun, and I really like some of the characters, and I really hate some of the characters. So hopefully season 4, which is coming, hopefully season 4 tightens it up, because what it needs more than anything is better pacing, and just a better narrative thrust where they can tell the story more evenly throughout the season instead of in these big sort of fits and bursts, you know, at the beginning and the end. Only Murders in the Building season 4. I thought this was the best Only Murders season since season 1. Steve Martin, Martin Short, Selena Gomez are, you know, these podcasters who are running this true crime podcast about murders that take place in their building in the Upper West End of New York, the Arconium. And they, you know, it follows a format. You know, there's a murder, and then they solve the mystery, and they do their podcast while they're solving the mystery. And I thought they had a really good mystery this season. And I think that what I would say that the weaknesses were this season are that they don't do enough podcasting anymore. Like, they don't have that feature into the season as much as they used to. And that, I just think I miss that element of the show. And, you know, they don't have like their fan club anymore. And they've replaced a lot of that with like way more celebrity cameos. And I think the celebrity cameos work okay, but I could do without. You know, in the first season they had Sting, and that was kind of funny, but it was just kind of like a gag. But by the 4th season, they have like a bunch of different celebrities, and it's like, okay, guys, you don't need this many celebrities in your show. Like, the charm of this show is the leads and the mystery and the podcast. So I hope in season 5, which will be the final season, I hope they get back to that. But I did really enjoy season 4's mystery, and it was very funny and all that. Rivals on Hulu. Rivals is a show that flew under my radar at first, but I'm so glad I ended up watching it. It was one of my favorite shows of the year. It's got David Tennant, who is excellent in everything. It takes place in the 1980s in sort of a idyllic, rural, pastoral area of the UK. And it has to do with Tennant's character, who is like a TV mogul. He runs his own TV franchise, and he has a bitter rivalry with with Alex Hassel's character, who plays Rupert Campbell Black, who's like a Tory playboy nobleman, you know, rich, independently wealthy, always sleeping with some other beautiful woman or another. And then also with Aidan Turner's character, Declan O'Hara, who is this TV journalist interviewer who's kind of this, you know, hot stuff on TV right now. And anyways, the point is, there's a bunch of feuding going on between these men and then the women in their lives. There's, I think the two of the most beautiful women on TV right now are in this show. There's Bella McLean, who plays Taggy, who's Declan's daughter. I think she's drop dead gorgeous, and her character's kind of, I would say, maybe like not the central character of the show, but kind of the character who is not involved in all the feuding, who kind of, you see things transpire through her eyes. And then there's Nafessa Williams, who plays Cameron Cook, who's a TV producer brought over from America, also just drop dead gorgeous. And she's kind of a tough as nails. She's a black woman in a white man's world, and she's an American in Britain, and she's still tough as nails. And you know, she's an interesting character. Like, she voted for Reagan. She's not like she's very not what you would expect in a lot of ways. And all these characters have a lot of different entanglements, and there's romance and backstabbing, and it's just a super well acted, well written show. I found it absolutely hard to stop watching right from the moment. There's a lot of nudity in this show. You don't see a lot of nudity in TV shows these days, but this one's pretty sexy at times. Anyways, all right. Totally different show. A Man on the Inside on Netflix. This is Ted Danson. This is a show from the creator of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, A Good Place, Parks and Rec. So if you like that kind of humor, if you're into those shows, you'll like this one, I'm sure. This one is a little bit less out there and zany than some of those. It deals with Ted Danson, who his name's Charles. He's a widower. He lives alone. He is challenged by his daughter to either find some sort of hobby or a job, something to keep him busy. And he ends up taking on a job from a private eye who sends him undercover to infiltrate a nursing home, a retirement home, to find out who stole this rich lady's jewels. And Danson he's adorable in this. He's really funny. He's so likable and watchable. And, you know, what follows is this mystery. It's like a cozy mystery, right? And it takes place in a retirement home, and he's trying to figure out who stole this necklace. But it's also this like examination of loneliness and this man sort of finding a new chapter in his life where he leaves this sort of world of isolation after his wife dies and comes back out into the world and finds new friendships and new companionship. And it's very, very funny and very, very sad. It really is. It's just a genuinely great show. I actually watched this in one sitting, which I don't do with shows very often. Even Netflix shows that release all their episodes at once, I very rarely just sit down and watch an entire season of TV in one evening. And I did that with this one because I just thought it was great. Slow Horses on Apple TV. This is the 4th season. I thought this was probably the best season of Slow Horses since the first as well. Gary Oldman, of course, is wonderful, but everybody I just think the whole cast is so great. And this was a very exciting season. We learned a lot more about kind of sort of some of the dirty dealings that went on before our modern batch of spies were in Slow House. And this was also kind of an emotional season. There was some pretty major stuff. There's a pretty major death, and then Rivers' interactions with his grandpa, who has dementia. Those were quite powerful. So this, they've already filmed season 5, so we just have a little while to wait for that. It's very exciting because this is the best spy show on TV and one of the best shows on TV, period. They have not had a miss yet. Always the tightly paced, well-written, superbly acted. If you're not watching Slow Horses and you like British spy thrillers, you should be. Fallout on Prime Video. Fallout is controversial. Some people who are big Fallout fans, of the series really, really, really didn't like this one. I thought it was great. I thought it had a great mystery. I thought Ella Purnell, this is her third. Ella Purnell is also in Arcane. Ella Purnell as Lucy was fantastic. This sort of bright-eyed, bushy-tailed vault dweller who has to go out into the wastelands and find her dad and turn over all sorts of secrets and mysteries in the process. It's got Walton Goggins, who plays as the ghoul, this, pretty much undead bounty hunter. Those two in particular were just so fantastic in this. And I thought they did a great job of bringing the spirit of the games to life. Yes, I know that it fucks with lore. I know that it messes up some things in canon, and I just don't care. Because honestly, I can just view this in a different light than the games. And at least they did a good job with the story. Like, this is what I've said over and over again. Like, even if like a show like Rings of Power had messed with the canon of Tolkien a little bit, but had been really good, I could have forgiven it. I can say, all right, this is just different. I'm gonna watch it and enjoy it for what it is. And that's what Fallout does. Yeah, they mess with some of the lore of and the game timeline and other things, but the resulting product was really entertaining, and I enjoyed it. I think everyone should watch Fallout. I think it's a great example of how to adapt a video game, even if you're going to change a bunch of stuff. And they told their own story, and honestly, I think you can just enjoy it, and you can enjoy the games, and they can both coexist. That's my personal opinion. Shogun on Hulu. Hulu had a lot this year. I think Apple, Hulu, and Netflix are really the big winners this year when it comes to like the most really good shows. But Hulu surprisingly had quite a few, and Shogun is right at the top. This is based on James Clavell's book of the same name. I've only read the beginning of the book. I admit it's a daunting book, and I have not found time. That's on me. But I'm sort of glad because I didn't know what was coming, and I thought that this was a really, really amazingly well produced show. It's very dark. Some of the scenes are extremely violent and hard to watch, but everybody did such a good job. There's Hiroyuki Sanada, who plays Lord Yoshi Toranaga. I'm having to read here because I'm never going to remember the names. And he's kind of the shogun, right? The central figure of the show. And he's fantastic. And he was very heavily involved in producing this and in making sure that there were a lot of, Japanese actors who spoke Japanese. And of course, not all the actors are Japanese. We've got Cosmo Jarvis as the Anjin, the John Blackthorne character. And you get a lot of the show through his eyes, right? Like he's the stranger in a strange land. But you get a lot of the show through the eyes of Anna Sawai and other characters. Sawai plays his translator, and I can't remember what her name was. But anyways, it's just a really good show. I think that there were a few things that puzzled me at the time. Like I thought there was going to be a big battle. There wasn't, but that's all true to the book. So overall, just a fantastic historical drama. Penguin, the Penguin on HBO. I was not sure what this would be like. I wasn't sure if this was going to be any good, but I do love Colin Farrell, so I was excited to see his take on the Penguin outside of the movie, The Batman. And it was surprisingly good. I mean, it's basically just a mobster show more than a DC Comics show, but it actually works pretty well. And I think they had a lot of, I think one of the two surprising things about this show that I really loved. One, the character of the Penguin is just, he's awful. And you keep expecting some sort of redemption arc for him. Some sort of like, okay, he's bad, but you're going to see his good side come out, or here's his good side. That's going to, no, they just straight up make him a villain. Like by the end, you're like, wow, he's a genuine monster. Like he is just an awful, awful, awful human being. And I'm glad that they didn't pull any punches there. Like everything potentially redeeming about this man was cast aside, and he just fully embraced his selfish, sociopathic nature. The other big surprising thing was Kristen Milioti. I was getting her name wrong. Kristen Milioti, who played Sophia Falcone. She was just phenomenal, and what a great character! Like Sophia Falcone was like the dark horse of this show. Like she was just so I don't know. Like you don't know what to expect from her, and just at every turn, it's just such a great performance and a well written character, and kind of a perfect foil to Oz Cobb. That's the Penguin's name in this, not Oswald Cobblepot. But those two things, just the total darkness of the Penguin, and then this wonderful new character. Well, I know Sophia Falcone's not new, but she was new to me. And Milioti's performance was phenomenal. Just a couple more. I know this is running kind of long. Baby Reindeer on Netflix. I just thought this was a tremendous and absolutely devastating, heartbreaking show. It's a true story. Richard Gadd adapted his own story of being stalked and his own tales of trauma and abuse into this Netflix series. He plays a character named Donnie. Jessica Gunning plays his stalker named Martha. And it's so tense, and it's funny at times, but it's also like really, really dark at times and really troubling. So like, major trigger warning, because there's a lot of really fucked up stuff that happens. But the acting, the writing, the characters, it's one of the best shows I've seen on Netflix, period. Like, I don't know that I'll watch it again, because it's one of those shows that it's very difficult. It's a very difficult watch, but I do think it is worth watching. And it presents this, when I first heard it's like about a woman stalking a guy, like I thought, okay, that could be either like, it could be like a thriller, or that could be like comedy. But what it ends up being is a character examination, and very, very, very nuanced. Like, even at the very end, like you just don't know how to feel about everything. And I guess that's like real life in a lot of ways. Like, we don't just reach an endpoint where we have everything's wrapped up tidily in a nice bow, and we have a perfect cathartic like realization that everything is fine, or that this is that and that is no. There's a lot of doors left open and wind howling through the house. So highly recommend it, but it is a hard watch. Shrinking season 2 on Apple TV. Again, another Apple. Amazing show on Apple. I love Shrinking. It's a dramedy, right? It's about Jason Segel's character, who is Jimmy. He is a therapist. His wife has died in a car accident a year. Well, I guess it's been more than a year by season 2, but she died tragically, and he had a total meltdown and effectively turned to drugs and alcohol and prostitutes and self-destructive behaviors. His relationship with his daughter was really, really damaged by this. And he then sort of has to pick his life back up, put it back together. His co-stars are great. I mean, Harrison Ford plays his boss and mentor, Paul, an older therapist, who is just grouchy, curmudgeonly, and wonderful. I think this is one of Harrison Ford's very best roles, and he's so good in it. He's very funny, but also the thing about this show is that it's very funny, and it will also make you cry, or at least it makes me cry. I relate a lot to this show. I'm not going to lie. I have struggled enormously over the last few years with depression and grief and addiction and alcohol and self-destructive behaviors that have caused a rift between me and my daughter. This show is weirdly about me. I am Jimmy, and my daughter is the exact same age as his daughter, and I relate to it so much that it's hard not to just really be emotionally connected to this show. And it can be really hard to watch. I get really emotional watching it, but it's also so funny, and I just really love it. And the music is great. Like, there's a scene in the second to last episode where Jimmy's he's on the verge of a total mental breakdown, and it feels so real because I feel like I've been there in that exact place like so many times. And then the Nationals' "I Need My Girl" comes on, which is like one of my very favorite songs, and so it's just like hits you really hard. So maybe this is my favorite show of the year because, or at least it's the one that I connect with the most, and it's just, yeah, it's a lot. As a bonus, this is not a show that came out in 2024, but it was such an amazing show. Happy Valley it's on AMC here in the States. I think maybe BBC or something else in the UK, but Happy Valley is a police drama set in the West Yorkshire area of the UK. It stars Sarah Lancashire as Police Sergeant Catherine Kaywood. I watched all 3 seasons of this in 2024, so that's why I'm including it here as a bonus. I think it's it's easily one of my 5 favorite shows ever made. It's so powerful. Kaywood is dealing with the death of her daughter, and who was raped, and her rapist is getting out of jail, and she's been raising their son. And then there's just like a crime, like he gets out and there's a kidnapping in the first season, and she is intimately involved in all of this. And Lancashire, her performance as Kaywood is so astonishingly good and emotional and powerful, and she is one of the finest performances I've ever seen in a TV show or a movie ever. This series, all 3 seasons are excellent. But in the first season, which is probably my favorite, there is one scene in particular that I think is the most intense scene of TV I've ever seen. I was literally on the edge of my seat. I mean, people say I was on the edge of my seat, but I think I was actually on the edge of my seat watching it. So it's kind of, I liken the show a little bit to Fargo in that there's a lot of similar sort of structure to the crimes, and the players, like why these crimes happen, are very similar to Fargo. It's just not funny like Fargo. It's much more emotionally driven, character driven, and fantastic, brilliant. So didn't come out in 2024, but if you haven't seen it, I cannot recommend Happy Valley enough. And that is my 38-minute video on the best shows of 2024. Wow. So let me know what you thought were your favorite shows of 2024. Obviously, some of the ones I wish I could have had be on here. I wish that the 4th season of True Detective had been good. I wish that House of the Dragon was good enough to include, and I just can't include it here. It just was too disappointing in the end. I wish that we'd had a better version of The Acolyte that was actually about, a serial killer investigation or something. I don't know, something that wasn't garbage. Those are all on my other video, my worst and most disappointing TV shows of 2024. Fortunately, I skipped a lot of bad TV this year also. You can only take so much, and this is a much longer video than that one. So even though people accuse me of hating everything, I hope that this video is testament to the fact that I actually like a lot of stuff from a lot of different genres, and including a lot of shows that feature female leads. Shocker. Anyways, thank you for watching. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave a comment. Peace. Who's on